It's the track.
Hey, recording the podcast. It is Monday, March the 30th, day later for Shane Rohde. First of all, Deo, apologies to the tens and tens of fans of the Trackstitch podcast. We did promise that we were going to do a pod in Asia, but life happens, stuff happens. I got to Asia. I was all teed up to do a bit of a solo pod because I knew that you were busy, and just realized that the hotel internet didn't work. The same situation happened on the weekend. We want to do it, but then your hotel internet in Australia, we'll talk about that in a second, also crapped out. But we're finally back, mate. The triumphant return of the Trackstitch podcast, the venerable Shane Rohde.
Well, it remains to be seen whether it's triumphant, Jason, but let's just proceed on the basis it will be.
Well, let's get into it because we've got a lot to talk about and you're a bit short on time. It is actually a work day for you, even though you are a lawyer. Debatable what you guys actually do, of course. It's a work day for me too. Midday, though. I'll palm it off as lunchtime. Shano, you sent me a text, I believe, was it Saturday afternoon for me? So it would have been Friday afternoon. Check this out. It was a screenshot of a flight itinerary. You headed off, as we do on the Trackstitch podcast, people's podcast. We've got to be there on site to get the best takes. We've got to feel the emotion of the event. You actually went over to the Maurie Plant meet over in Melbourne. I think we should kick off with that one. You were actually there. Shane, thoughts on the meet?
I was the man on the ground. I tell you, it's something, we've had a good year in our business, and it's something that I'd always thought, man, it would be nice to just jump on a plane and go watch Maurie Plant, because we don't have a lot of meets at that, well, we have any meets, sadly, at that level in little old New Zealand. And I thought, I just want to go over and watch all these, Georgia Hunter-Bell was coming. Peter Bolt was supposed to be running. He didn't run. Cameron Myers. And I thought, what a cool thing to be able to go and do. So I went and did it. It turned out to be 2K from the hotel I always stay at when I go to Melbourne, which awesome. Where I go quite a lot for work and study. And it was super cool, just able to amble down there. And it was a great experience. So
I noticed pretty heavy on the men's events. They had a 1, 2, 4, 8, 15, 3K. On the women's side, probably the big event was the 1,500 meters with the marquee athlete there being Georgia Hunter-Bell in the showdown with the young Aussie star, Claudia Hollingsworth. We'll start on the men's side. We'll go through, I just put down a few of the potential sort of key talking points in this one. Men's 800 featuring New Zealand's own James Preston. Peter Bowl didn't end up showing in this one, which is understandable. He just come back off his World Indoor Championships campaign. We made the final there. That was a bit of a letdown, though, by your estimation.
Yeah, the 800 was underwhelming.
Yeah. How did Preston look? Because Justin, obviously great friend and fan of the podcast, told me that sort of James is just rounding into shape. He's had a few sort of health issues out of his control. Sort of ran well until the final 100, struggled a bit. Was that your assessment?
He looked like he's short of some match practice. He looked a little bit.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's fair. A little bit. He was forcing it on the back straight. Love his attitude. He was chugging away down that back straight on the second lap. He was grinding it into the turn. You could tell he wasn't. You could tell he was going at a higher output or energy level than some of particularly the guy who won were following. No, it was solid. It wasn't 149. It wasn't 144. No. It was solid.
Yeah, and I mean he's had actually, even despite that, a pretty good campaign for obviously as the New Zealand record holder. 146 at the New Zealand Champs, a low 145 performance. I think was it in Adelaide or out in Perth. One of those other meets, and then this performance here. 1,500 on the men's side. Cam Myers, man, that guy just continues to roll. I mean, it's the summer of Sam and Cam right now. Sam Ruth on the New Zealand side, these two young guys are sort of going back and forward for the limelight. That's a damn impressive performance there. 3:30 on his own, a bit of a mishap in this race, but there was another athlete in that race that I know you're quite high on, mate.
Who was that? Sorry, Adam Spencer.
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean,
medalist at the World Indoors.
Yeah, lovely springy action. He's sort of more capable than Myers at slingshotting that last lap in a major championship, hence the World Indoor bronze. It's probably very tired, as Georgia Hunter Bell was. Doesn't matter if you're a superhuman elite athlete, world-class athlete. That travel schedule that Georgia Hunter Bell was talking about coming from Poland, same for Spencer. He would have been tired. He's a lot better than a 3:37 guy. She looked a bit tired, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But Myers, I mean, this is pretty cool little stat for us running nerds. He broke Hisham's Oceania and all-comers record, right? And I was there and with old Steve Scopes in 2001 when Hisham ran 3:31 low then, with Legat and Nian. So that's pretty cool. 25 years later, it stood quarter of a century. I'm quarter of a century older, and Cam Myers, I mean, he was only 153 high, I believe, through 800. I mean, to chop it down and run 3:30.4 in Aussie, effectively, let's be honest, on his own.
Yeah.
It's damn impressive.
I think Brad Mathis was doing the pacing, wasn't he?
Yeah, he did a good job.
Like 6-time New Zealand 800-meter champion, 145 man in his own right. Good to see him back with some kind of form.
I didn't think it was going to be as fast as it was, which is a testament to how smooth and effortless Myers is looking at the moment. He just swallowed up the track, and the way he put that gap, Spencer was there with a lap to go. He was starting to fade, and he 53x last lap. He didn't do it like he was grimacing and like sprinting as such. It was just a controlled release of power. I've always thought, obviously he's incredible talent, but I always thought he's got limited prospects in the championships, particularly if Jakob's out in terms of that last 200, and we've seen that actually play out. But man, I walked away going, wow, that was impressive.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Alpe Rouge performance, because I thought that as well. When I saw the time, I'm like, wow, 3:30, that has not been run very often, if at all, like on Antipodean soil. Certainly hasn't been run in New Zealand. I was like, man, that has to be close to the fastest it's ever been done. Interesting segues. We are the podcast of segues, Shay, and that will segue into a question that we have later about another Alpe Rouge performance and potentially being beaten this year. But yeah, Cam Myers, what do you think the prospects are? I mean, I was just thinking about it in terms of like, what do we think we're going to see from him this year? It'll probably be over 1,500. There are some big miles around. He's obviously going to be running at Prefontaine. Big showdown there with Hocker. Sam Ruth is going to be in it, just announced recently. He's going to be in it. I'm sure the top Americans. What do you think we're going to see from him? 3:28 low. Do you think he can break 3:28 this year? Still a tough ask.
Yeah. I mean, by conventional metrics and assumptions, I would say yes. However, I did think about when you were talking about on our little chat with old Kerr that, he's definitely going to run 3:28 this year. One thing he does suffer from, and I believe Mottram suffered from it too, and perhaps it's the curse of being an Australian as opposed to, say, a Kiwi or a Northern Hemisphere athlete, is they seem to be very close to their optimum shape often year round. And one want to make it, and he doesn't seem to come on as much as, say, someone who's have a little bit more of a periodized approach. So I don't know. I'm not saying I'm very bullish about him as an athlete, but I don't know whether I don't think he's, for example, doing a lot more volume and then is running 3:30 now in March in Australia, and he's got 3:27.5 in him. But then on the flip side of that, the way he did that, you've got to think that in a pack in Stockholm or somewhere like that, he can run through 28.6 or 7, because why not?
Yeah. Because we've seen a lot. I mean, it's not like we've seen a lot of guys run that, but for example, if George Mills can run 3:28 and change, it's kind of hard to believe that Cam Myers wouldn't. And your point is valid, because we do know that Cam Myers is like a big double threshold guy. So as we know, it's not quite the same as the past with respect to the periodized approach, where guys are considerably off their form in the winter months and then, have much higher peaks in the summer, but it's kind of hard to imagine that he couldn't in a big race, particularly if you run 3:30 at Melbourne, which is a good venue, but a little bit cool. And it started raining, during the meet.
Yeah, it was
a little bit towards the end.
Yeah, it was a bit windier earlier in the afternoon, but it was pretty good conditions, I've got to say.
Yeah. So one of your favourite athletes, actually two favourite athletes prior to this meet, I know maybe not so much now, but women's 1500, Georgia Hunter-Bell, you mentioned her earlier. We've been really bullish, in particular you. You mentioned Claudia Hollingsworth and her ascension 2 or 3 podcasts ago, just proving that we are the most insightful track and field podcast. We can predict the future on this podcast, Shano. And Claudia Hollingsworth, I mentioned her also. Justin, again, shout out Justin, big fan of the podcast. And I said to him, hey man, what's Hollingsworth prospects over 800 this year? Do you think she'll run under 155 because she's so strong? He told me that she was going to focus on the 1500 a little bit more. This is probably her biggest, I'd guess her biggest win of her career over 15. How did she look in taking down the world indoor champion, Olympic medalist, world championship medalist over 800, Georgia Hunter-Bell?
She looked phenomenal. I mean, because it's harder to, when you're at the ground, it's harder to pick up the splits, but I believe it was pretty slow. 2:13, as I remember seeing on my little phone stopwatch function. I don't know what the 1200 was, but it looked like a pretty menacing kick down, and they left Lyndon Hall and the other quite good Aussie girls at Billings in their dust, and they're good athletes. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say on retrospect, I was pretty bullish about the fact she beat Georgia Hunter-Bell. I was like, wow, that's incredibly bullish for her prospects. However, that schedule that Georgia Hunter-Bell, it's such a long name to say, but then GHB sounds like it's like a terrible acronym. So GHB, Hunter-Bell, it was a hell of a schedule she had coming back from Poland, and to make it there and actually turn up, and like Bowl, Hell, who are Aussies, didn't show because they were tied. Spencer was tied. So props to her for coming out. And, you know, she's a world champion. She's a very attractive woman. She's got all the little young chicks, particularly, were sort of really like screaming her name and trying to get autographs. So she's become a star along with Keely, and obviously the duality of these two young British ladies. So that was really cool to watch. But yeah, I think it was a great run from Hollingsworth based on didn't she win the Aussie 3K, Hollingsworth? So she's
8:37 this year.
And more toned, than she's looked before. She's obviously got the anaerobic 800 ability, couple that with a bit more perhaps mileage or just getting older and stronger. Very bullish about both those athletes, I think, you know, and it was sort of a coin flip. Like, she got ahead. She didn't douse her. At the same time, Georgia would have been tired. It was the best race of the night by a long way, put it that way.
Oh, good. It's I mean, that is an interesting one, to come from Poland to basically go as far as you can. I don't know. There must be some training camp or something happening down there, or she's going to also run Sydney. I'm sure they've got a meet in Sydney coming up too. But that just seems like a big toll to come from Central Europe all the way down to Australia to run a race. So, no, props to her for doing so, adding a bit of profile.
Good for her profile, and making hay while the sun shines. So good on her. And it was cool. It made the race. It was awesome.
Good. Well, as a lot of the tens and tens of fans of the podcast will know, we are a little bit more focused on the middle distances, just because we were former middle distance athletes ourselves. That's where our passion lies. But Shano, for me, I think probably the biggest story in question for me that came out of this meet, Gout Gout. I mean, so much hype around this guy, the next Usain Bolt. You know, obviously very similar in terms of stature, tall, lanky, angular sort of guys. I mean, I don't want to sound like a dick asking this question, but is Gout Gout good? I mean, he seems to dominate in age group performances. I got a bit of a theory that I'll give to you after this one, but he only runs the 200 in this meet. Right, he gets beaten again by Lachlan Kennedy, who beat him last year, and there was a huge, kerfuffle and even bigger sort of circus around him running last year. He got beaten by Kennedy then. Kennedy ran the 100 again in the Melbourne meet, so he did the double. Gout Gout only runs the 2, and Kennedy dusts him what was going on there? Like I don't know. You were there. Like, what did you see trackside?
No, I left. It started raining. I didn't have a jacket. Right. Yeah. Nah. I'm my own. I'm there for my passion. I'm not there for.
All right, fair enough.
I was just, if it hadn't have started raining, I would have stayed. But it was probably 10 minutes before he was due to race. Yeah.
So you're not much help on this one. Anyway, I mean,
is he good? I mean, I don't follow it because I don't really have any interest in this.
It's a harsh question. He's only 17, isn't he?
I don't know. I mean,
he's young.
Yeah, I think yes, he is good, and I think you've got to give it proper context. Is that when was the last time Australian? Didn't they remember old Chervo and Patrick Johnson? So it's been a while since the Aussies, and everyone loves the sprints. The mainstream media, the fans, the sprints. So he's this dude who's got sort of the vestiges or the hallmarks of a Usain Bolt coming from Australia. They can get behind him, and he's big and tall and fast. So yeah, he's good. It's not my cup of tea. It's not a to me. It's like, well, we're not Aussies anyway, so it's kind of along the lines of there's none of that sort of passion or national pride at stake. Gotcha. Although I am an Australian cricket fan.
I was going to say, except when it comes to cricket.
Yeah, no, I do love the Aussie athletes as well. But you look at it and go, so then it's just another good young sprinter. So I get the hype from a mainstream media thing, but here at the Stitch, we're not buying into it so much. But yes, I do think he's good. He's very good.
I mean, one thing that I talk about my theory, I think one thing that I've noticed with him, and one thing that I noticed in this race, is that Lachlan Kennedy's a kind of a shorter, stockier guy. So he gets off the mark very well, and that's to be expected. It's the whole Ben Johnson versus Carl Lewis thing. Ben Johnson, much shorter, lower to the ground, lower center of gravity, just, was extremely quick out of the blocks. Carl Lewis famously wasn't as fast out of the blocks, but he didn't decelerate as much in the final, 40, 50 meters, even a 100-meter race, which brought him so many victories. But of course, one of the hallmarks of Carl Lewis was that the reason he was able to do this was he would stay incredibly relaxed. He would never strain. He was almost like the master of running relaxed in the final 40, 50 meters. Yeah. In this particular race, I watched it a couple of times. Lachlan Kennedy's inside Gout Gout. He gets out a lot quicker. And man, I got to tell you, coming around the bend, like poor old double G or G squared Gout Gout, he just looked a bit like Inspector Gadget. He looked like he was held together by by a packet of nuts and bolts from Mitre 10. And it was similar to what we were saying about Niels Laros in the 1500-meter final in Tokyo. Yeah. Like when he really had to force it versus, those races in Zurich and Brussels where he dominated. He was able to keep his form together. Like Gout Gout's form just absolutely capitulated. Like he fell apart around that bend, like just all over the place. And Kennedy was able to hold on. And there's an Instagram guy out there called the Aaron Brown. Kerr loves him because he loves his social media. He's always sending us these things. I listened to a thing that this guy did. He's quite a controversial figure. He says what's on his mind, which I like about him.
All the greats do.
All the greats do. And he was saying that one of the issues that Gout Gout will have to be able to translate his form into the senior ranks is when he's running against juniors, he almost knows no matter what happens, even if he has a slightly bad start, no matter what, he's going to have enough power to always win the race, which breeds this kind of confidence to the point where he never panics. And in what we've seen so far in his senior races, he just hasn't been able to translate that. Now, again, I think he's either 17 or 18 years of age, so he's extremely young. But he has had a little bit of exposure so far to running in senior events. He's run a few events in Europe at the World Champs. And I don't know, there will be a point in time where you would like to see, I guess, this turning point of when he gets into these races and perhaps he's not as fast out of the blocks, that he will be able to relax and sort of come through and use his ability. Because, he ran 20.43 in that particular race in Melbourne. He's already run 20 flat this season. He's run 10 flat for 100 meters. So that is way off his ability level. And we just haven't seen it yet in the senior ranks. But I just thought I'd ask that question. Bit of a provocative one. Is he good? Yes, obviously he's good. But yeah, I'd like to see
maybe
a little bit more from
like
G squared.
Mental block with that meeting and racing against that guy, because I remember it's like deja vu. Exactly 12 months ago, he kind of ate shit in that race as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe time of year. Who knows? Yes, he is good. Is he as good as the hype, or is his ceiling as high as the hype would lead you to believe? I just
Maybe
don't
not.
know, because I don't put enough time and energy into watching sprinting and Gout Gout. So it would be irresponsible journalism of me to comment.
All right, moving forwards, we'll do a bit of a World Indoor Championships rewind. So some very interesting things to come out of this one. I mean, I don't think it's been a while ago now. Obviously, we were going to do the podcast, hopefully when I was in Asia. That just didn't pan out. So almost every other podcast worth their salt out there has done sort of recaps of the events. But there's a few interesting topics in this one that we should have a look at, Shane. Yeah. Starting with, I guess, the men's 800 meters. And Cooper Lichtenhouse becomes the youngest ever global champion in track. And in the men's 800 meters of all events, which just seemed inconceivable, none of the really big players were sort of in attendance. Here's a question for you, though. Do you know who the second youngest champion in track history is? And I'll give you a hint. It was also in the men's 800 meters.
Second youngest. Is it indoors or out?
He was an indoor champion and an outdoor champion. So, and it was
okay. So, yeah. 1 second. So, is the men? You say it was the men's 800. Was it Yuri?
No, it wasn't. That's not a bad guess, actually.
Let's tell.
All right. Okay. It was Muhammad Aman at the 2013 World Championships in Moscow. Yeah, exactly. He was allegedly 18 years of age.
Allegedly. And didn't he got caught for drugs as well?
He did get eventually dusted.
Okay,
here's one more trivia question before we actually talk about the event. If you can answer this one, Shano, you are the all-time knowledge goat, because this is a really hard one. This is not who is the youngest global champion. Who is the youngest medalist in all of track at a global event? And I'll give you some hints. It was a women's distance runner. It was from the golden era of track. And I don't know if I should give you the country, but I guess you could probably ascertain the country that I'm talking about. But do you know who it might possibly have been?
What's this all about?
No. That was.
You say the gold. You said the golden era. Give me the era.
Golden era. So 1990s onwards. So there you go. That's probably a good help. I will give you a hint. The country's Kenya.
Oh, but they're like 30 when they're like 18.
I know, I don't know. Just dredge out a potential name that you 100% know the name. All right, okay. Sally Barsocio.
Yeah, I remember her.
Yeah. Get this. Again,
15.
Allegedly. Yeah. 15 years, 153 days. She was bronze medalist in the World Championships 5,000 meters in 1993. Anyway.
And she went on to do some pretty good things, though.
She won the 10K eventually, I think, in either, it might have been Seville or Athens towards the end of the 90s.
She won something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, Cooper Lichtenhouse, he wins the 800, just sort of continuing this mastery of the distance for such a young age, showing a tactical acumen that is, I guess.
I'll give you a controversial hot take, and it's a little bit out of character.
Do it.
It's very negative of me. I think World Indoors sucks, and I'll tell you why. It's not a proper World Championship.
Yeah.
All of the guns don't turn up, and it's distorted the meaning of being a world champion. What I think they should do is they should have the indoor circuit with the pacing and all that. They can have there's a bit of gimmickry to it, and I think what it does as well is it pulls some of these people who are potential, like a Georgia Hunter Bell or a Lichtenhouse, they're potential outdoor world champions or Olympic champions, into a periodization, which is in our sort of old-fashioned view is not necessarily ideal, And when all's said and done, in 10, 15, 20 years, do we really think we're going to be sitting there going, oh, that person, say Lichtenhouse doesn't end up winning the Olympics or the outdoor world champs or running 141 or breaking the world record? We're not going to go, oh, but he did win that world indoor title when effectively 8% of the top guys turned up. So I just think the label is giving it's a bit like triathlon with their age group champion. When you meet someone, go, oh, Johnny from down in the counts, he's the world champion and triathlete, and then you find out it's like the third division of the 40 to 53 age or something like that. I just don't. I was thinking about this. It's like the world indoors. Like, why am I not as the ultimate track nerd who just gets up and watches races and all that my whole life? And then why am I not going, oh my God, like Cooper Lichtenhouse won the world championship? Because in my head, it's like, well, you have to look behind the label, which is world championships, and look at who was in that race. And to me, it's like, he should have won that race. He's a 142.2 guy. Creston's good. I'll give him that. But I think Lichtenhouse is absolutely the real deal. Like, emphatically the real deal.
Shano, as always, you and I, this is why we are the number one track and field podcast for 50 to 55-year-olds who live in Auckland now from that, or from Timaru as well. Hopefully, Kirk. I'm going to have to text Kirkwood and tell him that we're back on the wagon here. Shane, we are telepathically connected in a way, because in my notes here, I wasn't going to bring this up, but I said that honestly, the world indoors even seems secondary to some of the US indoor meets, doesn't it? Like, I feel like the Millrose Games and even the New Balance Indoor Grand Prix, and certainly even the meet in Live In, they just feel, and that's not US, but they feel bigger than the world indoors.
I think if you're like a Kiwi or an Aussie or a Brit, they're a bit rude. I think if you're Kiwi and Aussie or a Brit, if I was like one of these elite athletes, I think I'd rather win the Com Games, because at least it means something to your population, the heritage of, say, New Zealand. Speak for New Zealand with Walker and Snell and all these great athletes that have come up before and after. Whereas the World Indoors, you win World Indoors. I just don't think it matters like some of these other events.
No, and there has been this rise, particularly, for example, in American medalists at the World Indoor Championships. They've become more and more prominent. And I think that what we've really seen is that that's just a reflection of, as indoors in the US, just as a sport, has become bigger and bigger and bigger. Like these meets, like, for example, at the BU track, they've got two, the Valentine meet, the other Memorial meet they've got on, where all these top guys are turning up now, even the pros, like your Nagousas, like your Hocker. Ritzenheim takes the OAC group there. You've got people coming overseas just to run times. I think as you've seen these meets rise in prominence in high school athletics as well, just, because of, for example, NIL deals and all these performances kind of matter towards these sorts of things. What's happened is that the profile of the meets have just increased in the US, and that has sort of trickled on into the pros, because it is great that, for example, Cole Hocker was there, Jared Nagoose was there, Lichtenhouse was there, a lot of the top stars on the women's side, a lot of the top Americans were there as well. We'll give some dap to Nikki Hilks just in a second, but I sort of agree with you. It lacks a little bit of luster, and
the other problem too is
Lichtenhouse, but again, who knows what
the other thing too is it's when you've got the unequivocal, universally agreed major championships, everyone goes. You don't not go unless you're injured or you're having problems, right? So there's a sort of an unwritten bargain accepted between the agents, the athletes, the fans, the sponsors. That is where you go if you want to be at the top of the pops. So, but the problem in World Indoors is that there's a lack of uniformity too, because you don't have that all-encompassing compulsion towards you have to be there if you want to be the number one. What you see is actually an uneven or unequal application of talent in events. For example, Lichtenhouse is very weak. If you actually look at the women's 1500, Georgia beat effectively, let's be honest, a lot of the people that she would have had to beat at World Outdoors were there.
Except for Kip Yagan.
Except for Kip Yagan. So perhaps if Faith was there, she gets second, but to me that would mean in my head a lot more getting a silver to Kip Yagan. It's very hard to beat Kip Yagan. Whereas, she's the champion, but if you look at, say, Lichtenhouse, he's the world champion, but they're not equal champions, is what I'm trying to say, in a slightly garbled kind of way. They're not. You there's not that assumption that everyone who is aspirations of being the GOAT, for example, or just the GOAT of that race is there. It's just like uneven. It's like, it's just not, that's a problem.
Well, to prove that, not even the newly crowned world record holder, who is American himself and the defending world champion, bothered to turn up. So I think that's a little bit of a telling marker there. Hey, look, anyway, keeping things going. M11 track club under Trevor Painter, they won the double as predicted on the podcast. It never happened. I actually wrote that in my notes that was a prediction they were going to win the 8:15. So Shano, Keely's obviously a big topic of discussion on the podcast, as she should be. Very, very big year for her coming up. Sort of her peak window still open as she is looking to try and run under 154 is the world record. Big questions around that one. 155.30 there. Here's the question. We talk a lot about when you want to make those jumps down to really high performance levels, and obviously for her to run 153, which probably would be the world record in a lot of people's eyes. I think certainly in both of our eyes it would be the world record. She had to have a lot more volume of 154, 155 races, which now she's seeming to do. She gets the win, 155.30, looks good. How do you think this sets her up? Is this just another sort of piece of the puzzle in this season, or is it just going to sort of maybe compromise her in terms of, burning out later in the season?
I think that Trevor Painter and Jenny Meadows and their whole vibe they've got going, I think they're pretty clever. I think they're pretty experienced. And I think, I think they're able to navigate it all. I mean, I think if she stays healthy, I think she's going to run 153. I watched that World Champs final, and the manner she dismantled Audrey Veto, who's in her own right a top prospect. 150, is it 155?
155 already, yeah.
Yeah. So the way she took, and there was something a bit off with Keely. I think she was injured, wasn't she, or sick, or the World Champ. She wasn't herself. So just she looks stronger, more muscular, fluent. I think, put it this way, it's now or never. This is probably the last year she's got.
Agree.
She'll probably start to wane a little bit after this year. So I think we could see 153.7, 153.8 this year. I genuinely believe that.
The only, me, I'm an absolute nerd on stats. I believe that also numbers and splits, they tell a lot, patterns to the way athletes race. We're going to talk about a pattern coming up in a second here. I did notice this one though, Shane. Her splits in this final, 27.26, 29.69, 29.5, and 28.9. It's still this uneasy pattern of this opening 200 meters being about 2+ seconds faster than every other 200. And I don't know what that means. I notice these little things. Maybe I'm over analyzing it, but it just seems to be no matter what speed of race that she runs, this is the pattern. And I've said on the pod to you and privately as well, I believe that first 200 meters needs to shrink. It needs to get a lot more closer to these other ones. And
I'm sure you're right, because you're expert on that type of analysis. You're extremely clever with it. I'm less sophisticated looking at things like that, but I'm more sort of the vibe, Marbo, so to speak, But my vibe Marbo approach tells me that, and it hooks into something you said just before, that the more times her body gets used to running in that orbit of that 154, 155 low pace, that whole what was once a ceiling or resistance to a stress becomes in relative terms comfortable. And she's actually able to punch through the barrel, so to speak, and hit that 153 high. I mean, it's not really a failure either, is it, if she runs 154.13 or something like that? I mean, that's still, given that quote record is nonsense anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, that would arguably still probably be the clean world record. So I think she's going to improve her personal best reasonably significantly. Where it ends up is with the gods.
Exciting.
She's a lot better athlete than she was. She's a lot better athlete than she was when she ran 154, 6 or 7, like 18 months ago. I think she's stronger and more confident. The way she dismantled Vero in that, it was, been poo-hooing the world indoors concept. It still was the world championship, and the way she went out and just took her apart was impressive.
Totally agree. Women's 1500, Georgia Hunter-Bell gets the win. I don't think not a massive upset on that side there. I mean, I didn't even see this one. I know that there was a bit of a set two in the 3000 with Jess Hull, but Georgia Hunter-Bell gets the win over Hull in this one, who, I don't know how you're feeling about her prospects coming up, but I just made a note. Yeah, I just made a note more to give some dap to Nikki Hiltz, because I think in the prediction podcast it didn't happen. She beat
Hull, did she, in the 15?
Oh, did she? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
I think she gets second. She ran over the top of her. Yeah. She gets third. She got third.
God, we should know, being the People's Middle Distance podcast. But either way, I had a prediction that Nikki Hiltz, who just, and we've said it on the podcast before, is so good at getting it right in big events, was going to medal in this one. She did here in this one. Again, context of running the women's event, so respect.
We talked about it. We talked about it with Nikki Hiltz, that we said that if it was extraterrestrial, like your Kip Yagons and your Segays were involved, she just can't. Her toolkit wasn't such as she could do at that pace. But when you moderate it, she's cunning and savvy, and she's good at meting out her effort, and she does have good form, which she holds into the finish. I don't know if she's about a big kick, but she's got good form to hold into the finish.
And tough.
So it was the perfect setup for her.
Yeah, I agree. So she delivers again. And Shane, I nearly missed on this one, but big shout out to one of our very own, Tom Walsh. He is now the all-time leader in World Indoor Championship medals. So Tom, if you're a fan of the podcast and you're listening, disregard everything we said about the World Indoors being slightly rude. That is a record. That's crazy. Out of all the athletes that have ever done the World Indoor Championships, he is now the all-time record holder in terms of medals. He wins the title here, his third title. He won in 2016. I was there, Portland, Oregon, at the convention center when he won his first world title. He won in 2018, and again, he wins in 2025. So congratulations to Tom Walsh. He's made a small fortune out of the World Indoor Championships. And a proud Kiwi now holds an all-time track record. That's going to be a great trivia question one of these days, Shano. Tom Walsh.
Yeah, no, I got you.
All right, okay. Moving forwards, at our final topic, the men's.
I couldn't get on and piss in his pocket too much after coming out with my hot take on the World Indoors.
It was just him, Tom. It wasn't me, and he's in Auckland. What would you do, mate, if there was a knock on the door tomorrow morning and it was big TW had taken issue with your assessment of the world?
Well, I'd have my golden retriever there. She'd protect me.
All right. Men's 3,000 meters, race of the championships, Shane Rohde. But how is it possible that it happened again? Cole Hocker. We have a bit of fun on the podcast, but we do come up with monikers for people. And we came up with this moniker last year at the World Championships, which was the Doc. Not as in doctor, but as in DOC, the deck of cards, because this guy always seems to get shuffled back through packs. How is this possible that he did this again? He has seemingly devised this strategy of getting out early in races to avoid trouble, but does not have the commitment to see through the pace. He invariably lets it wane. He gets passed by any number of people. At the World Outdoor Championships of the 5,000 meters, it was many as 11 because he was 12th at the bell. In this one, he gets passed by 4 or 5 guys. Josh Kerrs gets the jump on him. Cole Hocker runs, I think, 26 flat for the final 200 versus 26.4 for Josh Kerrs. But he does this going around those 4 guys. Is this another race that Cole Hocker has left on the table? I'm going to ask you a question in a few moments, but what is going on with this guy? Why does he keep doing this? And is this guy wasting his talent? kind of throwing away these races. It's almost like he's snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Is that how you're seeing this?
Yeah, that was particularly maddening, that one.
Ah.
Yeah, because you were talking about it, and I know you're hot on the whole deck of cards moniker, and I don't disagree with you. But in my head, well, he still did win the Olympics 15 and he won the World Champs 5, which is better than most athletes will ever do by any stretch of the imagination. However, he did, looking at it, the flip side of the same coin, he did botch he won the World Champs 5K. His better events of 1500, he got disqualified for having to barge his way through to try and alleviate the consequences of that very strategy.
Yep.
15, and now he's lost 3K. When you're talking about it, I was like, sometimes I think you attribute too much to tactics. And then I watched it and I was like, okay, like you cannot argue with your view on that. Like, he was so much better than everyone else once he got his shit together in the last 200.
As he is in every race.
And he was like head and shoulders quicker, but for those tactics, he would have pissed in. That's the truth of the matter. So, he absolutely lost that rather than Kerr winning it. Having said that, as we talked about the other day, Jason, Kerr's a winner, and Kerr winning races is not just about being the most talented, as we both know.
Totally.
It's about having a mixture of enough talent to put yourself in a position, and then you actually have to do everything right and win. And Josh Kerr, he can be mildly alienating or irritating with some of his comments, and we'll get to that about the mile in a minute and just some of the other things he's done and said. But he is a pretty unusual, irreverent kind of character. He's not sitting there worried about what the likes of you and I have got to say about him on a podcast like the Trackstitch. He's out there doing his thing. I was reading a thing, it was at Whiteman, talking about how when he goes to the Games Village, he's got this sort of incredibly, almost very neurotic, almost sort of psychotically prescribed routine about everything he sets out and when he does things at a certain time. So he's obviously quite a sort of pedantic kind of everything needs to fit together properly type of person. But hey, like, he beat Hocker when Hocker is just around 3:45 in the mile indoors. He's the defending Olympic 1500 and the world 5,000 champion, and he handed it to him. So, and he had to be good enough to stay away once Hocker had messed up. And no one else was, because Hocker was good enough to come around everybody else. So a lot of credit to Josh Kerr for that victory. He's the winner.
Back to Hocker again. I wouldn't say I'm apoplectic about it, but is that the right word? It is, right?
No, it's the perfect word, but come on, mate, you are apoplectic about it. Just own it.
Yeah, yes and no. I think the reason for my frustration is just I like seeing history being made. I liked the era of El Garouge dominating. I liked the era of Kip Keita dominating. I liked it when Rudisha dominated. I liked it when Jakob was dominating. And I just hate seeing athletes leave parts of their legacy on the table. And again, you're right, because people are going to turn around and say, how can you possibly criticize a guy that won the Olympic 1500 and the World 5000, etc.? But here's the simple reality of this, right? Now, at the Olympic Games, we didn't see this tactic at all. In fact, ironically, I feel that this was probably Hocker's best tactically executed race, because if you go back and watch that, he stays off the pace early. He slowly works his way through the field. Now, he does get incredibly lucky with Jakob doing what he did in the final 60 metres. I think we both agree that if Jakob had stayed on the rail, if Josh Kerr hadn't come up on his shoulder at that exact moment and Jakob had opened the gate, Cole Hocker would not have won that race, but he did. But since that Olympic final, we have seen 7 finals from Cole Hocker, and he's gone 3 of 7 in those finals. He was beaten in the US 1500 meter outdoor final by Jonah Koech and by Ethan Strand. Those guys are not on the same level as Cole Hocker. And he kind of palmed it off as this whole I'm just training for it. I'm not, the whole point was just to qualify, which I think people at the time are kind of like, okay, yeah, that sort of makes sense. He lost then the US indoor 1500 meter final got absolutely destroyed. So that means in his last 2 1500 meter finals that he's actually made, because of course he didn't even make the world one, as you said, because of these tactics, he's been beaten by 6 Americans alone. For a guy who's run 3:27 and has his level of talent. We said this on the podcast, the last one that we did, I believe, that his toolbox of physiological abilities are maybe as good as anyone that we've ever seen. And that I try to catch myself if that was hyperbolic or not, but I don't think it is, because we know he can run well and has the strength in a fast race. He's also got a vicious kick that potentially a guy like LG maybe didn't have. Sort of only Morcelli was kind of comparable to Hocker in that
one
respect.
thing you might be discounting, though, is when athletes, Beamish is an extreme example of this, when athletes have a pattern about how they say get out quick, lag back. Mary Moore is another extreme example of this. Renowned front runners like Jakob are the opposite, in the sense they just can't leave it alone by being off the front all the time. I think perhaps it's just some quirk of their physiology. That's how their bodies need to, because sometimes you'll see someone like Hocker go out and actually try and, get out, say, first shoulder, second shoulder, and sit there. And inexplicably, you think logically that's what they need to do to win, and then they end up 10th. Like, sometimes there's a sort of mysterious sort of, how do I put it, force at play that dictates. That's how their mind, even if it's their mind, even if it makes no rational sense, that they need to, it's just how they cope with the situation they're in. So I wouldn't entirely discount that as at play.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the only things that I've sort of landed on, that this is almost now locked in his mind. Like, he's got this pattern of going out, setting the pace to avoid, he basically executes the first half of the race exactly how you should, right? And that's what won him the US title in that indoor 3K when Nico Young completely messed it up, because Young was 2 seconds behind him at the 1400 meter point, right? And so Hocker only had to run for his final mile, a certain time, and Nico Young had to run faster than that time, plus run essentially 14 meters more. It just seems, I do agree that it could just be a weird thing that's happening where he does get to a certain point of a race and then he's like, okay, now I need to have a little bit of a rest to ready myself for the finish. And a lot of that is just subconscious. We've raced as well. Like, these are things that we just, for some reason or another, do. But I just think now that we're 7 races in, like, we've had a World Championships disqualification, right? We've had a loss at the World Indoors. And these are all things that contribute to your legacy. I just wonder if someone's not going to him and saying, hey man, like, you just need to avoid these jams. And my counter to that would be, I look at the way that Josh Kerrs ran that race, and as great as he ran and did exactly what he did to win, you're right, he's a winner. It wasn't anything crazy, right? I mean, he was 5th or 6th for the majority of the race. He just picked off places. He got into the right position at the bell. There was nothing that he did that Cole Hocker couldn't do. And I guarantee you, like you said earlier too, if Hocker had run that race that Josh Kerrs did, or even been on Josh Kerrs' shoulder, he would have won that race by 3 or 4 meters going away. He just has got like that X factor and power that we haven't seen in the final 150.
Yeah, well, he didn't.
Well, he didn't. And the really interesting thing is that with no championships this year, other than this World Athletics Ultimate Championship that happens in the year, we may not actually see this again until the World Championships in 2027, which is a long way away. But you're right, he didn't win the race, and kudos to Josh Kerrs who got it done, which of course will segue us into probably our final little chat for the day. This was a question that came out from the mailbag for the podcast that didn't happen. It was about Josh Kerrs and his prospects for the 1500 mile record. Well, we can eliminate potentially the 1500 off that, because big news in recent days, another huge talking points across track and field websites, letsrun.com message board going crazy. Josh Kerrs announcing that he is going to go for the world mile record in London, July the 17th, I believe. So about 2 weeks after Prefontaine, which is happening on the 4th of July this year. Not sure if Josh will be there or not, given that he's targeting this one. Shane, what jumped into your mind when you heard that Kerrs is going to go for this world mile record? How do you rate his chances? What do you think?
Well, gut says no, but I'm several leap years behind you in terms of analysis of, for example, the delta between the 1500 and the mile and how it correlates. I'm always in my head a little bit confused by that performance of Algaruza's and the fact that Nian was just behind him, yet Nian was only a 3:28 runner. I suspect Nian was really a 3:26 runner, or was in 3:26 shape that day with the mile.
Of course.
And then I was increased, and then when Jakob and the Goose ran 3:43 at the end of the season, I was even more befuddled by it, because in my head I had thought it was sort of must be equivalent to sort of a 3:26 something.
Right.
But then the way they did that, particularly with Nagoose, who we've never seen anything to indicate he's a 3:26 athlete yet. I mean, he's obviously incredibly talented. The ball's in your court. I don't really know. My gut says no, but that's an easy sort of almost intellectually lazy response to, no, he can't do that. Maybe he can, but I just don't think he can. But I couldn't really connect the dots to tell you why I believe that.
First of all, I think the most important thing is that the mile record is much softer than the 1500 record. And and there's a number of reasons for that. And I've never really understood that because I haven't understood the reason as to why that is, which is that the mile just doesn't run as much as the 1500. And certainly back when we were younger track fans, there was this era where LG was mercilessly chasing the mile record. They used to have a mile at Rieti, they would have a mile in Brussels, they would have one in Zurich. We haven't seen a mile in Zurich for years and years and years. You had Oslo, you had Pre. I mean, they were running Rome, used to have miles all the time. And obviously that's where the world record was set. They just don't have as many these days. That's one of the reasons why it's lagged behind. But I think that when I look at this one, it's a more logical record for him to chase, because we've said this on the pod before. It's highly debatable whether either Jakob has got the physical tools to go for the 1500. I don't think he does, but I do think he does have the physical tools to run the mile. The one thing that really works against Josh Kerr here is his age. And I know I sent you and Stewie some numbers on this one. Every single track world record holder, and at least in the running, the oldest track world record holder is actually Aries Merritt in the 110 hurdles at 26. But if you look at the 100, the 200, the 400, the 800, both LG was 23 when he set the 1500 record, 24 when he set the mile. Even Cheptegei, now that again, sometimes with the ages of East Africans are a little bit debatable, but he's down at 23. But it's really like the 8, the 15 and the mile that we should look at. And they were set by 23 and 24-year-olds. It would just seem to be a massive stretch for a 28-year-old to come out and do that. And I was talking to Justin about it. He made a good point. He said, but Josh Kerr is relatively under-raced in terms of his career. He's not like a circuit warrior, certainly like Rudisha was, like LG was, or even like Jakob was. That's a great point there. But is that enough to overcome, just the fact that when you get older, you do get slower, and the fact that you can't run great forever? The other thing, though, is this, Shane. Every world record holder of the mile has also, since it's really got into what I would call like modern territory. So starting with Coe, when he ran 3:47, it's gone Coe, it's gone Cram, it's gone Morselli, and it's gone LG. All those guys too were 24 or younger when they set this record. Okay, so there's just like some kind of a little bit of overwhelming anecdotal evidence to support this. In fact, out of the 10 fastest times ever run, the oldest, when an athlete was the oldest when they did it, it was Helge Rouge. He was 26 when he ran 3:44.95 in Rome back in 2001. So I look at this and I'm just like, this is very, very ambitious. I know Brooks, shout out to Brooks, love that brand. I know Brooks are doing a little bit of a sub-4 thing here, or a breaking 4 thing with Kip Yeagon. They've got some special apparel technology and some mysterious spike technology. But man, I just don't see how this one is feasible.
I just realised I've got quite low battery on my computer. Plus, I also have to be out of here in a few minutes.
That's right. Perfect.
I don't think. The other thing too is I don't think Kerr. I don't think his greatest attribute is his record chasing ability. He's very good. Yeah, he's a championship racer, a winner.
Agreed.
He's got a beautiful running form. He's got a good racing brain. He's got a great kick. So I don't think that's going to define him anyway. It's not like he's a time trial cart horse who's limited to chasing records and can't perform sort of a la Ron Clark, so to speak, at the major championships. So I think this would be a little cherry on the top for him if he was able to do it. Hey, even if he runs 3:44.2, that's maybe this is the sort of hype he needs to give himself to go out and focus on something in a non-championship year. So good on him. And that's sort of very in keeping with his kind of vibe, is to announce something sort of theatrical and grandiose to pump himself up for. So it's just sort of normal Josh Kerr behavior.
Yeah. Final point on that one too, since we've got a lot of anecdotal numbers to support this one, then we'll get you out of here. Just looking at sort of the level of athlete you have to be to run under 3:44 for the mile. Obviously, El Guerrouch's volume of incredibly fast races, 5 times under 3:27, other 3:27 races in his career, at least 2 of them, number of 3:28, 3:29s. That we don't need to speak about that one. But Noah Nguyen, kind of sneaky here. Because you're right, he only ran, 3:28.13, but this is 25 plus years ago, without wave light, without new spikes, without bicarb, without all this, like new shiny toys to help these guys. Noah Nguyen still ran 4 times under 3:29 in his career. Josh Kerr has run once under 3:29 in his career, and to break this record, you have to be splitting through 1,500 about 3:28 flat. The one outlier, you mentioned him, that sort of throws a bit of a spanner in the works of this sort of theory behind the numbers is Jared Naguse, right? Because Naguse had only run 3:29 flat for 1,500 before that 3:43 mile. But of course, the season later, he went on and ran 3:27 in the Olympics. The thing with Naguse, though, is I think we both agree, his kind of X factor is more that ability to just grind out an even pace. So, he's not the same racer that Josh Kerr is. He almost feels like he's a better time trialer. And the fact that he had Jakob to basically pace him for, the entire distance of that mile, I think that's sort of the contributing factor to that one. But either way, hey, good for the sport, good for Josh Kerr. He's never been afraid to put his goals out publicly, as he said. Good for Brooks, and it's certainly going to add a lot of excitement to the meet in London, 17th of July. And we're going to find out if we're right or we're wrong. That's the great thing. How much do we really know? All right, Shane, you are low on battery, maybe literally and metaphorically speaking. We'll get you out of here. Anything else from your side, mate? Are you going to be around next week for the Potto, or you're heading back over to Australia?
Byron Bay, so I'm not sure. Depends how the quality of the internet is.
That's all right. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, either way, I'm going to put it out here. I said we'd do a pod in the last couple of weeks, and obviously we didn't. But I'm definitely going to do one. It'll either be some kind of mailbag spectacular. You'll just have to put up with me talking. But either way, the Trackstitch podcast is triumphantly back. Good podcast, Shano. Enjoy your work day. And if of course, we're going to chat before you go to Aussie. But have a good one, mate.
Take it easy.
All right.
See you later.
Peace, brother.